Hey, everybody. Sorry about the wait, guys. I had some computer issues. I apologize. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Welcome to the DT show. I'm Daniel. Please hit the like button and the subscribe button. My screen froze on me. I know the intro was going, and then I was trying to be in there. I'm actually in the bottom also. But I got it going now. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We have an excellent show for you guys tonight. Tonight, we're going to be joined by former homicide detective Chris McDonough. He's the creator and the host of the Interview Room, one of the most respected true crime channels covering high profile investigations and missing person cases. He's got decades of experience in law enforcement, and tonight he's going to help us navigate through the Nancy Guthrie abduction and kind of give a background look and a behind the scenes look, so to speak, at investigating an abduction like this. So without further ado, let's bring in Chris McDonough. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, Daniel, thank you so much for the invite, my friend. I'm doing well, and welcome to Turkey Nation. The first time here, so I'm excited.
Yes, sir. Glad to have you. Glad to have you. It's been, I followed you. I've talking, we're talking a little bit before the show started. I followed you a little bit throughout your career in true crime. I think you're excellent, your analysis and your thoughts. It really shines your experience. And so I'm glad we could have you tonight.
Well, you're living on faith. So, yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you again. And, just to kind of start off and rip the Band-Aid off, what are your thoughts on how, as a former detective, looking at this case at what and how Pima County has handled it? There's been a lot of distrust. I, for one, have kind of fallen along with that when it comes to like the sheriff and stuff, but how confident in this investigation are you?
Well, man, you do rip off the Band-Aid pretty quickly, don't you? That's that's awesome. So, I mean, let's take a 60,000 foot view, not 30,000.
Okay.
A little bit higher. Okay, everything at the top is completely disheveled. 1,000%. I mean, there's more air turbulence up there than anybody can possibly imagine. I mean, if you just look at the problems with the sheriff and the board of supervisors and all of those fights that are going on, all of the politicians that jumped in the game almost immediately. You had Senator Kelly, you had an FBI director, Patel, you had the president of the United States. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than that in terms of being at the bottom and trying to land a plane. Okay. And so from the bottom level, you've got all these people above you that are telling you what the weather is. And they're telling you that, hey, don't worry about it. There's no turbulence. You're just going to make it to the runway. And when you get on the radio and you ask the tower for clearance to land, they end up running it up the flagpole to everybody 60,000 feet above you. That creates a lot of problems. And so that's where you get decisions, from day one, where you assign a supervisor that has never, ever worked a homicide case to probably one of the most high-profile murders in the United States outside of the Lindbergh baby back from the 30s. And then you introduce him at a press conference and say, hey, I just, be nice to him because he's been up all night. Okay. Well, as a result of that, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what kind of decisions did this guy make? And, what are the repercussions of those decisions as this investigation starts to move forward? And then secondarily, what decisions weren't made? And I think we started to see that pretty rapidly on the types of decisions that were made and the types of decisions that were not made. And so here we are today, 100 and whatever it is, what is it? What are we at? 128 days or 130 days?
130.
We're at 130 days into this. And the first, that TV show, the first 48, there's a reason for that. And if you, statistically, if you are not making correct decisions within the first 24 to 48 hours, then that's like pouring concrete and not letting it set and then starting to build a house on it and, and walking through it, walking through the mud, right? The old concrete. Okay. Well, if your pumper's down and it's not putting the concrete where it needs to be, well, the old carpenter's rule, 1/2 inch at the bottom is 2 inches at the top. And your house leans.
Yeah.
So I think problematically here, there are lots of problems. Most of them are political in nature.
I agree. I think that there is definitely a political problem there. You have it's not a good look. You have persons from the department, sources that are coming out talking negatively about the leader and the chief, or the sheriff. I'm sorry. And then you also have Kash Patel, which you brought up, which to me, I thought Kash Patel's statements were alarming. When he goes in and he's basically kind of using Nanos as a scapegoat and using the Pima County Sheriff's Office as that kind of told me that they're not very close to solving this, because if they were, even if what he's saying is true, I'm not necessarily certain that's the approach you want. I would have thought that maybe the approach would have been like, hey, whatever may have happened in the beginning, we've assisted, we're confident where we're going, we think there's going to be a resolution pretty soon. But that wasn't the message. The message was almost throwing him and the department under the bus. Do you get that feeling from this case that they're no closer today than maybe they were maybe a month or so ago?
No, I think they're a lot closer.
Okay.
But I think in the very beginning, we have to understand that, that relationship in of itself was problematic before Nancy Guthrie ever disappeared. You had, deputies within the department being investigated by DOJ, by the FBI. You had Nanos, his history. You had his number 2 guy. The number 2 guy was actually fired.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then he changed his name and he came back under a different name, back to the sheriff's department. Now he's in charge over the criminal investigations division. Okay. There's a whole bunch of history here that they hate the FBI, and the FBI could, quite frankly, care less for them. And so that was the kickoff point here. So if you think about that and those types of dynamics, okay, if you think about the fact that who released what type of information, right? The very first day, Nano says, FBI, no thanks, we don't need it, have a great day. And they're kind of off in the distance waiting for something, a phone call or whatever. Who does Nanos reach out to? He reaches out to his task force member, who is a deputy at Pima County Sheriff's Department, assigned to the Violent Crimes Task Force, the gang task force down there in Phoenix. And that's his FBI connection that he tells the public. Yeah, we had the FBI here on day 1. No, you didn't. You had an FBI task force member that belongs to you, and you control everything that task force member does. In fact, if you want to pull them back, you can take them off the task force. You're the sheriff. Okay. So he just played semantics, word salad with the public that he had the FBI involved day 1. Well, he didn't. It wasn't until day 4 that the FBI got involved. And you see that in the very first press conferences, or the first 2 press conferences. The one in front of the house, the FBI wasn't there. The one the next morning, the FBI wasn't there. It was him and his brand new, sergeant over homicide. And then the next press conference, there was one FBI guy there. Okay. And then the next press conference, the 2 of them were there, 2 FBI guys there. And what did Nano say to the public? And if you listen very carefully, he says, we have the FBI here and we just want to make sure everybody understands their role, i.e., Everybody stay in your lane. We don't need your help. This is a Pima County Sheriff's Department case, and you guys can support us. So if you look at the very first FBI press conference, the guy standing at the podium, what does he read? He reads a prepared statement that says, we are here in a support role. And what are we going to do? We're going to provide technical support, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And he goes down the lane. Okay. Well, by then, Nanos has already made the decision. He sent the evidence off. It's gone. It's on its way to Florida. He doesn't need the FBI in his head. He's been using his contract lab for years, and it's his case. So you have, when in our homicide office, we had a saying that it was on the wall: our day begins when your day ends. Okay. And I got to check your ego at the door. There's no room. I worked 13 years in homicide on a 7-person team. We had one female, and nobody was, bigger than the next guy. And we learned a lot. And because you work as a team. And in this particular situation, they didn't notify the FBI what they were going to do and how they were going to do it, because they approached this thing right from the get-go that this was a real problem in terms of it's a criminal investigation, and it went quickly from a search and rescue into a criminal investigation. And that's the way Nano saw it, and that's the way he sees it today. But more importantly, he sees it as it belongs to him, not the FBI.
With so many issues that they've had, and the stuff that you're bringing up now, and how they've done things, and for God's sakes, they still haven't picked up the mat. We've all saw the blood and everything else up front for a while there. If they do find somebody, is it going to be difficult to prosecute based on this?
Oh, this will be a defense's field day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's what I worry about.
Field day.
That's my worry, that they're going to find somebody, they're going to arrest them, and then there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be thrown out or in question because evidence wasn't handled correctly, or whatever the case may be, and that's concerning. That's concerning.
Well, if you look for tit for tat here for a moment as well, okay? Just think about this. Remember, there was a journalist, I'm not going to say her name, who said they were focusing on certain people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who was the source of that leak?
I believe she said it was members in law enforcement.
Yeah. Well, she said it was FBI.
Okay. Yeah.
She had a source in the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you have the photographs and the video show up. Did the sheriff's department release that information?
I don't know if they released it, but I know it was the FBI that got it.
Kash Patel released it
on
Twitter.
Oh, that's right. Kash Patel did release it.
Why? That was a slap in the face. Right back at you, Nanos. You're not gonna give us a DNA? No problem. Guess what we have? And we're going to tell the world. We got hold of Google, we got the video, and we're going to tell the world about it, whether you like it or not. Boom, Twitter, instant.
The frustrating part about that is that you have two law enforcement agencies that should be working together, and it seems like there's just some, hostility there. That is probably one of the reasons maybe perhaps this is extended as long as it has, instead of working together.
Well, and that's the 60,000 foot view.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot down on the ground, okay, are probably working fine, agent, detective, et cetera, for at least, once they decided moving it over into the Phoenix office.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Those guys and gals are probably getting along great, but I can guarantee you they didn't want that information released. I've been in that seat many times, There's no way you want that out there until everybody circles up and you have a little kumbaya and a powwow, and you say, okay, what should we put out there and what shouldn't we put out there? But when you have a sheriff and when you have, an administrator, and they're going, toe to toe with each other through the press, it gets nasty, and Nancy gets lost. And I believe that's what had happened in the very beginning of this thing. On whether or not that has impacted the totality of the investigation, I think the public needs to be aware at this point, even though they're over at the FBI office, unless there is a federal nexus, okay, Pima County Sheriff's Department is in charge, because that house and that potential body belongs to Pima County Sheriff's Department. There is, unless there's a federal nexus, i.e. she was taken or to a foreign country, taken across the state line, or anything like that, the FBI doesn't investigate homicides.
That's true.
Unless it's on federal property or it's a bank. Okay, that's it. That's the only time they do it.
A report just recently surfaced today that there was some tips in Mexico, and they were searching some graves or some spots for graves in Mexico. I don't believe they found anything. The FBI still hasn't taken over this investigation. Does that tell you that there's no evidence that she went to Mexico at any point?
I mean, there is no evidence of that at this point. And, those kind of things, happen all the time. It's just outside of Nogales. I mean, I worked in Southern California at the border. Trust me, we used to get that stuff all the time, and you can imagine, that place down there is a combat zone. The cartels are running that down there. So it wouldn't surprise me. It's a body. That won't surprise me. But I don't think it's going to be Nancy Guthrie. And I heard it's like 70 miles into Mexico in of itself. So
I don't
sell a lot of papers down there.
Yeah, I don't think it's Nancy. I don't think it's related. And the border itself, if this person took her to Mexico, it would have had to have been outside of right then when she got taken. There's so many cameras, there's so many like license plate readers and things of that nature near the border, that if they went directly from Nancy's house to the border, I think they would have been able to capture a vehicle in question, or at least investigated all those vehicles that would have been crossing over, that would have made it there in relatively the right amount of time. And so I doubt it, but it's possible. I had Jen Confidant, her former FBI agent, on the channel here, and she had mentioned that she had understood that the ransom notes that came out of this, or the ransom emails, they were sent to local news stations. And then when there wasn't a response, like in the media, then it went to TMZ on that Monday. How do you feel about this perpetrator possibly contacting, for instance, the media versus the family members, if this was actually the abductor?
Well, if you want money from the family, you reach out to the family.
I agree.
You don't call TMZ and you don't call the local news.
I agree.
So, to me, that was just noise. Now, the sequence of that noise may or may not be relevant. The FBI said, yeah, we're aware of it, and we're going to take all leads seriously. That's their quote. Well, that's what you expect. I worked a child kidnapping December 16th, 1989. A little girl by the name of Leticia Hernandez was kidnapped out of her front yard. She was 6 years old, playing out front. And it was a national case. She was spotted going eastbound across the United States all the way into Florida. And that case was profiled 3 times back then on America's Most Wanted. It was the first time a child outside of Adam Walsh's son, when John Walsh, it was the first time a child had ever been profiled 3 times on America's Most Wanted. We had tens of thousands of tips of where that body was and where, we got the child, don't worry, pay us this, pay us that, etc. It's all noise. It was all noise. We found her 26 miles from where she was abducted on an Indian reservation in Palo Reservation. And so, and what the public didn't know was while we were working one lane, okay, i.e. all of these hocus pocus, the second lane was a registered sex offender 4 doors from her. Okay. So I have a cup back here. It's called McRockpile because my assignment was to work all of the psychics and work all of those leads and those crazy leads. Okay. So I'm used to hearing that noise. Okay. For me anyway. And so when I heard that, there was 2 ransom letters sent and they were sent to, at first, a news agency. Okay. Well, it's not like the Zodiac Killer or BTK.
Right.
Where they've already got, 4 or 5 victims laid up somewhere. We're talking about an 84-year-old woman, sound asleep in her house at 2:00 in the morning, and some guy shows up, with weeds in his hands and tries to pull a doorbell camera off. Okay. Well, that's not a very sophisticated individual, number one. And number two, does that guy really look like he knows how to write letters about Bitcoin and send them to TMZ? I don't know about you, perhaps, but then why are you coming into the neighborhood for months and months and months doing pre-surveillance? What's going on here with this person?
Right.
So you have to take common sense and critical thinking skills and say, could it be related? Yeah, I'll give it a 5, maybe a 4, and put it over here. Okay. But I want to spend my time on the 7, 8s, and 9s, the ones that make the most sense.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. In fact, I was on the side of that. It was, as you mentioned, noise, and that it wasn't anything. Jen mentioning that they supposedly knew a few things, and then that now TMZ, and you got to take this with a huge grain of salt because it's come from TMZ, but TMZ, Harvey said that FBI were really interested in the first 2, that they didn't think that the last 6 or whatever, the ones that were talking crazy stuff, that didn't have anything to do with the case, but that the first 2 that they were interested in may have. And then that they also brought to light that Savannah Guthrie also had mentioned that she thought that the first 2, or at least 2 that they responded to, were from the abductor themselves. And so, I had the same thought process as you. I was like, why would they contact the media? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, the only persons that have ever contacted the media, as you mentioned, were Zodiac and BTK, which kind of, I don't put it past the possibility of this being a fantasy thing, whether that fantasy being revenge, whether that fantasy being sexually motivated, if the objection was Savannah, or even if this is somebody who has some, thoughts about elderly women. I don't put it past that yet. And I had wondered about that. Is this person, did he contact the media because he, I don't know, wanted the story out there? He contacted local news. They didn't say anything. Contacted another local news. They didn't say anything. Contacts TMZ. They talk about it, but they don't actually go into detail. In fact, they say they're not going to talk about the details of it, and then it disappears. So I thought that was weird.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of noise in this case, and that's why I bring things down to a very normal level in terms of, just sticking with common sense. Okay? A lot of times, investigators get so sidetracked on the how that they miss the big question and the why. Why does this look the way it does? So let's go back to what we know. Let's go back to fundamentals. Okay. the very first deputy on that scene there was a 911 call that came in. And so the very first person to ever hear that Nancy Guthrie was missing outside of the Annie and her husband from from Nancy's girlfriends, the next person to hear that Annie's missing or Nancy's missing is the dispatcher.
Right.
Okay. And that dispatcher then sends it through, a CAD system that hits the car because it's probably high profile. They may have pushed it out over the radio. I don't know yet. We don't know. We don't have that tape.
Right.
Okay. So we can presuppose, though, that officer got information, that deputy, and they go on scene. And what's the first thing they're going to do? Right? They're going to talk to the reporting party. Are you the RP? Yeah. Okay. What's going on? Well, our mother's missing. Okay. Well, tell me about that. Tell me about your mom. What do you mean? How do you know? Yada, yada. Okay. Well, we got a phone call from her girlfriends and, they said she didn't show up this morning for church. And she's always, my mom would never, ever not go to church. Okay. And we found the doors open, propped open in the back. And we looked through the whole house and we can't find her. We're not sure if she walked away. So we called all the hospitals because maybe we also thought it was a medical event. Okay, well, that's a lot of information coming out of deputy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorting through that pretty quickly. So in about 2 seconds, you can figure out the medical event by picking up the radio and say, dispatch, can you tell me if we had a medical, emergency here last night at this address? Standby. Negative. 10-4. Can you call all the hospitals, please, and see if there's any Jane Does that checked in throughout the entire evening? 84 years old, this height, this name, etc. Roger that. Okay. She wouldn't even be a Jane Doe. She'd be a Nancy Guthrie.
Right.
Okay. And so dispatch is running that up the flagpole. And now you're talking to the reporting party. What happened? Well, we got mom an Uber and came over to our house and we spent all night with her and we brought her back here and dropped her off. That's the last time we saw her. Okay. Let me look around. Blood on the porch. Maybe the doors are open. Maybe they're not open. Okay. I want to see if the house is disheveled, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. Every piece of this narrative so far has come from the RP.
Right.
Not one piece of this has come from any other evidence other than a witness statement. Do you find that concerning?
I mean, at that point, maybe. I mean, the reporting party has given all the information. They're the last person to see the person. I think you start off there. If they're the last person that saw they dropped her off, I think you do start your investigation there.
Okay. And then you go on the porch and you see the blood. Does that concern you yet?
Oh, definitely 100%. The blood, the missing doorbell camera, the fact that the back floodlight is bashed in. Yeah, those are concerning.
Okay. And so then you're going to get on the radio and you say, I need a supervisor here.
I'd agree.
And the patrol supervisor shows up and said, what do you got? Man, I don't know, man. This is weird. What do you mean? Well, I'm getting weird vibes here because there's blood on the porch. Apparently this, according to Savannah, nobody else other than maybe the RP. Okay. There's the doors propped open in the back or a door propped open. We don't even know if it's more than one.
Mm-hmm.
And her phone, her medicines, her watch, everything's in the house, Sarge. Everything? Yeah, I was a supervisor. Okay. What do you mean everything's in the house? Yeah. Okay, well, if she's 84, how far can she walk? According to the RP, she can't walk more than 150 feet. Okay, let's get a search. Go out 150 feet, 200, maybe 300 yards. Get some more people here. Stand by. I need
Right.
more. I need more resources. Okay. Also, let the sheriff know that this is Savannah Guthrie's mom. Roger that. Okay. That's how it rolls. That's how it happens. Okay. And then the sheriff gets there and all hell breaks loose because now he thinks he's in charge. And guess what? You're trained in the academy. That first officer on the scene is making all the decisions until that three stripes says, okay, I got it from here. You're going to follow my direction.
Right.
And then that butter bar says to the three stripe, I got it from here. You're going to follow my direction.
Yes, sir.
And it keeps moving. Okay. Well, when you have people up here who show up like General MacArthur and they start making decisions, this guy down here doesn't know what this guy's thinking up here. Okay. And you never want that. Ever. Because administrators do administration stuff. They buy paper clips, staplers, they go before the board of supervisors and they argue for more stuff. And did you ever hear the very first thing that Nanos complained about to the board of supervisors when he had the media in front of him?
I did not. What did he say?
He complained about all the cameras and the AI that he's been wanting, remember?
That's right. Yeah.
And he went off on this little tyrant and then he apologized. Okay. Well, that's what a supervisor does. The guy on the bottom is going, should we take the mat? Okay. Do you think we should collect the mat? What do you think? Should we protect the blood? And now you hear these broadcasts coming out where you can hear a deputy say, hey, make sure we don't disturb the blood on the porch.
I heard that.
That guy's doing his job. Okay. While Pretzel Boy, Nanos, up here, okay, is pretending to argue with the board of supervisors in a press conference. Okay. So I don't blame the first couple of guys on the scene for the screw ups yet.
Right.
I think they could be new. My sources have told me less than 2 years. And that first guy that's on the scene, was just following orders. If this thing goes, to crap in the long run in a trial, it's because of, nonads. He's the one who screwed this thing up and his command staff. Now, there was decisions made. Somebody made the decision, and typically it's a field sergeant who gets on the radio and says, hey, I need homicide here. Hey, this is in California, it's a 187. And they don't put it over the air too much, too much because the media is monitoring scanners, right? So typically a supervisor would go, hey, I got a 187 here, 1144, which is a coroner's case. I need homicide out. And then our phones ring and we respond. Everybody goes. And once you get there, you want to make sure that right off the bat, number one, the scene has been secured. Somebody had started a log, and that you expand the scene out further than what it initially appears to be. I can't tell you how many times I walked up on a homicide scene with my flashlight out and looking for blood, and the guys are standing in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you learn pretty quick.
Yeah, I had a scenario that was something similar to that. A guy broke into a house and cut himself, and I was a PPO at the time, probationary police officer. My FTO was showing me how to collect blood, and he was like, all right, this is how you do it. We'd done it in the academy, but he was, on the field training, and it's hot in Texas. So he collects it. And he's like, you put it on the swab and then just a big old drop of sweat right on top of it. He's like, well, that one's no good, but that's how you do it. When it comes to this case, when it comes to this guy, I want to bring up the video real quick. I want to see what you see here. Let's bring this up real quick. All right, so this is him approaching. I've kind of slowed it down and cleared it up and stuff. I want to kind of give you my thoughts on something and see what you think.
Sure.
One of the things that stood out to me is the first step that he's taking on this sidewalk is right on the border of the sidewalk, and behind him are the little yellow the little steps to walk to the side of the house. And so that told me he was coming from directly from the side of the home, probably coming from where the driveway is, because there's like a rockway on the outside that if he was coming from the driveway, he would have had to have crawled up, or obviously come directly in front. But given his steps from the corner, and then the next one is like in the middle, and then it gets further in the middle. My thought process when I was watching this was, I watched it a few times, and the first thing I thought is, I think this guy's left-handed. The first thing that he does is he manipulates his weapon with his left hand in front of him, which I thought was kind of weird. That was the first thought. And then the second thing is he blocks with his right hand, and then he uses his left hand to manipulate the doorbell camera. Now, I've been around guns quite a bit, so maybe it's just me in habit, but if somebody, shines a light at me, or somebody does something and I have my weapon with me, my hand that I'm going to draw with is going to be closest to the gun. And so this guy, I don't think I would be doing this to switch it around. And so he then bends down and looks over to the left. And one of the things, I talked to my buddy Mikey, who's a boxer, and he told me that left-handers are left-bodied. And I noticed when he stepped up, it was his left foot. Most left-handers, not all of them. And then he picks up the plant with his left hand. And so to me, everything seems so left-sided. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it could very well be, but I haven't really. I'm more concerned about why this guy, did he have a vehicle right now, right?
Okay.
Taking this thing sequentially. In order to get her out of there, in terms of disappear, you're going to need some mechanism to get her out of there. You're going to need a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a vehicle, then my first thought is, because it's easier to find a car than it is a body.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no matter what. And my first thought is, okay, where's a vehicle? And that line of approach that you're talking about, is that where the car is parked, or a car parked, or something parked on that area, in that area? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next piece of that puzzle, right, for me, to your point, is, okay, this guy comes to this house and he has a weapon. So now that's a frame of mind. Okay. His thought process is he's prepared for deadly force. Now,
Right.
Is it a real weapon? Is it fake? Is it to intimidate the victim? What is it? Right? We don't know. But the fact that he has a weapon tells us we do know that he prepared to, dress up in this outfit here and come to that porch willing to use deadly force.
Mm-hmm.
Because so if you play that out hypothetically, if the cops were, one of the neighbors would have seen or heard something suspicious and the deputies pull up, or they're going to see that thing in front of him.
Right.
And they're going to draw down on him and say, hey, what's going on here? Now, that tells us a lot about this individual. It tells us, number one, he was confident enough to park his car somewhere where nobody would have seen it. And if in fact, he had done pre-surveillance on this stuff, then if that's the case, he's very comfortable with that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
because he's come in there multiple times. And that shows a familiarity. And so there's a higher probability that he's potentially a local. Because if you take what they call the victim risk continuum,
Mm-hmm.
and you take environment, situation, and circumstance, low, medium, and high risk, the victim, what's her environment? Well, she's in her house. What's the situation? She's sound asleep in her house, right? What's the circumstance? She's taken out of her house. Okay. In being in her house, sound asleep at 84 years old, is that a low, medium, or high risk activity? Well, that's a very low risk activity.
Right.
So everything swings to the left on that victim risk continuum. That means there's a higher probability that the suspect and the victim have crossed one another at some point. So the suspect has a familiarity with the house, or the victim has a familiarity with the suspect to the house. A painter, HVAC, pool guy, family member, the list just goes on. Okay. Now you take that same scenario and you put a prostitute at 3 o'clock in the morning at a truck stop nearby. Is that a high, medium, or low risk activity?
Right.
That's a very high risk activity. Okay. Well, if the environment is a truck stop and the situation is she's getting into trucks to do John's, okay, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the situation, well, then that's a very high risk activity and the higher probability that is a stranger to that victim.
Right.
And that's where you get serial killing and all that other stuff at that end of the pendulum. But at this end of the pendulum, you have to stay at the house. So what are the indicators that also gives us, from an investigative analysis aspect, which is my background, criminal behavioral investigative analysis? If you think about what's going on in the perpetrator's mind, well, number one, why are you covering your face? If you look at all the incidents around that area, all the burglaries, including the guy throwing his backpack over the fence, okay, you can clearly see the guy.
Yeah.
Okay, why didn't he cover up? Right?
Well, he knew there was cameras.
Yeah. Or he's not worried about getting captured. Okay. This person is thinking about their identity.
Mm-hmm.
This person is really concerned about what they look like. The gun, the gloves, the pants, the backpack, the sweatshirt, the mask. Okay. All of this projects two things. I don't want anybody to recognize me, but more importantly, I don't want the victim to recognize me. Because if this individual goes into that house, which it appears he may have, and confronts a victim, and that victim wakes up and goes, "Oh, Frank, the pool man, what are you doing here?" Okay. Well, that's why you wear a mask. Okay. So there's this idea then, okay, what's left for the victim? Smell is always a good one. I can't tell you how many victims or witnesses I've interviewed that said, I've asked them, what did the guy smell like? And they say, oh, he smelled like eternity cologne. Okay, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
And so those little idiosyncrasies start stacking up pretty clearly. And so now when you take a look at that, to your point, if he's approaching from the left side there, okay, and if he's left leaning, i.e., he's coming right to left, okay, well, maybe he is left-handed. Okay. But if in fact that is relevant to him, what's going on with the weeds? What's his point of entry here into that house?
See, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things that has bothered me about this case. Because from what I understand is most burglars, most intruders, entry point and exit point is typically the same, right? Most cases, even Brian Cobert entered and exited the same way. And we have these doors that are open. And let me see. The back doors are opened, and they're held open by what looks like a pot. And the one thing that I found interesting, because people are also typically um, creatures of habit, and so let me see if I can find that photo. There's a pot right here, an empty pot right here next to the gate coming out of the back. The here, this is held open with an empty pot as well. My thought process was, man, if his point of entry and exit was supposed to be the back door, and I think that maybe that was the point, and then circumstances changed. To me, I think when you bring up somebody familiar and stuff, I tend to side away a little bit from the family members, because one, this guy like beat the crap out of the floodlight here, but he forgot and he took the camera in the front, but he forgot the one on the side of the house, the one that captured him, I think at like 2 something, that is motion, but they don't have a video of. I got a picture of it. So this is the one that he beats up in the backyard, but he leaves this one alone. You know what I'm saying? So
that's a light. That's a light.
There's a light right here. It's not a camera.
That's a camera, but the one on the wall that you just showed is a light.
Right. So he destroyed the doorbell camera. He or at least he took it. He broke the light in the back, but he left this camera up. And so I thought to myself, also, if his intention was to come out the back door and then go around to the back, and let's just say he was parked on the side here, and this was his plan, why is he going up to the front? Why is he getting seen on camera? And if this was a family member, why not go in, like you mentioned, like you wear a mask so that you don't get recognized. If this was like Tommaso or somebody like that, all he had to do is go in and just kind of say, hey, Nancy, we need to go. Something happened. And then there wouldn't be an issue. There wouldn't be a struggle. There wouldn't be any of that. She'd just go out and get in the car and take off. And, whatever plans that they had, whether that be financial or insurance claims or whatever the case may be, they could say, well, all we know is that the garage door opened and she wandered off, and they would never have found her. And so, not breaking that back window, coming around, and me thinking that one of the reasons why he changed his mind. So again, according to sources, and I don't know how true this is, but apparently the rest of the house was clean. It didn't look like there was an assault other than the exit. And so my assumption is that's the moment where she knows she's got to fight, right? That this is it. And so there's maybe a struggle, maybe something that happens there that causes the blood. But if his plan was the back door, I think then maybe perhaps he underestimated her mobility. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of iffy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, but I want to ask a couple of questions here.
Go ahead.
All right. So that area right there, because of the observatory, is basically, they discourage light pollution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. At 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, how does sound travel?
I'm sure it's pretty loud, especially in a quiet area like that.
So if you're beating the crap out of a light in the backyard, you're taking a risk, a really big risk. Do suspects want to lower their risk or raise their risk?
Right. No, yeah. They would lower it.
Yeah. I mean, that is their game. The whole reason he dressed up is to lower his risk.
Right.
Okay. The whole reason the suspect may have done some advanced surveillance is to lower his risk. Okay. If that other picture is in fact a second night, a different night, not the same night, and I don't know if it is or isn't.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard two different things, but let's just assume we run with the fact that it's a different night and that he had come into this neighborhood, that one right there.
Mm-hmm.
He had come into this neighborhood, previous to this. Okay. And if in fact that is the same night, well, then he's now taken off, or it's a different person. So now we got more than one. Is that a high risk or a low risk?
More than one would be a higher risk.
Yep. So everything right now that we're talking about, the suspect's taking a higher risk to pull this crime off. Okay. Beating the light up, all this other stuff. Okay. And now if we think about, okay, if he in fact is going to come around the back of the house and point of entry is going to be coming in through the back of the house. Okay. Well, what is the point of entry?
Mm-hmm.
Is it through the kitchen door? And if so, who created that narrative?
Right.
Who was it?
That was the reporting party.
Correct.
Because they said that the back door was open. They thought it could have been a ambulance or
who created the narrative that the pot was at the door? The reporting party. Who created the narrative that all her stuff was left in the house? The reporting party. Who called 911? The reporting party. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All of, so far, everything has been the reporting party so far. Okay. And now you start getting digital evidence back. Okay. And by the way, okay, there's a broken light in the back. Well, how do you know? Because I saw it. Okay. Okay. Where'd that come from?
Right.
Okay. And there's blood on the porch. Okay. What time did you get here? What time did you arrive? Well, according to the sheriff, the very first press conference, it was around 11-ish, 11 a.m. Okay. Well, the 911 call comes in at about 12:03 or 12:04. And the sheriff said, well, actually, we'll give it to the family arrived at 11:56.
Hmm.
So he moved the timeline up 56 minutes. Okay. From overnight, he moved it up 56 minutes. Okay. So I started asking the questions. Okay, well, what if the timeline was 11 a.m.? Let's hypothesize. We know that she was dropped off at 9:48 p.m.
Right.
Because we have a data point somewhere on a garage door opener, somewhere. It could be an app. Who knows what it is at this point? It could be on the RP's phones. They could have the Q app on their phones to open the garage door from anywhere in the world. So I don't put a lot of stock in that. The garage door closes at 9:50. So 2 minutes. If you look in the garage, there's an 8-inch slab to the kitchen door that she is utilizing a cane at 84 years old. So my next question, and by the way, there's a slight angle going up into the garage as well.
Mm-hmm.
So my question would have been, walk me through how you dropped your mom off. Explain that to me. Well, I parked here. I did or I didn't get out of the car, or I did get out of the car. We're not really sure, because the very first time it was both of them dropped her off. And then that narrative turned into, no, it was just the son-in-law that dropped her off.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first press conference, the sheriff is asked, did the family take her inside? And the sheriff turned and says, yes. Did they see her inside? Yes. Okay, so what does that mean? Inside the garage, inside the house? Okay, what exactly does that mean? Okay, so now we know for a fact that they have a data point that says 9:48 in the evening, that garage door went up.
Right.
So now I want to know about pattern of life. How, when mom is taken home by family, do they drop her off? Where do you drop your mother off typically? Is it out front by the railing and she waddles her way up the stairs, and then you see her go through the front door with a key? Or do you drive her to the side and she goes through the garage, in through the garage door into the kitchen? Help me understand that.
Right.
You notice we haven't heard how the family got into the house?
Yeah, no, I don't know how the family got in.
Why?
I'm not.
Because the sheriff's holding it back.
Right.
And now, do you find it's an interesting anomaly, or do you think it's a process of investigative movement that they impound the daughter's car?
No, I get why they did that, but I mean,
Why did
wouldn't they be able to verify Nancy's movement with her phone? I'm assuming, if she got an Uber, she would have had to have her phone with her to have gotten to Annie and Tommaso's house. They know that her pacemaker disconnected at a certain time that night. So I'm assuming that, her person was fairly close to her phone, at least throughout that process. Wouldn't that kind of document, like, all right, where she got put, especially with the FBI now involved? I would have assumed they would have grabbed the phone, did the GPS deal, and, they would have been within a 3 foot, 3 meter accuracy of the steps that she took, the direction that she took. And then once you actually have the phone itself, wouldn't they be able to tell them, like, all right, she took X amount of steps,
Yeah.
it correlates with the heart and all this other stuff?
Yeah, but that's not in question right now.
Okay.
Okay. Right? Because that phone's inside the house and they downloaded it. Right. Through Celebrate. Okay. But let's go back to, remember, don't get ahead in these kind of things. Because if you get ahead, then we miss the bouncing ball. Okay.
True.
And so the question is, why did they impound Annie's car?
Well, I mean,
you're an investigator.
Yeah.
You're the detective. You're standing there and you come to a decision where you go, you know what, Annie, I hate to tell you this, I need to impound your car.
Well, one, as you mentioned, they're the last person to see her. They're the last person to drop her off. They're the reporting party. You got to do your due diligence and make sure that they're not involved. So I would be checking, we know that there's blood outside. I'd be looking if there was blood. We also know that there's a claim that they went back there and dropped her off at a certain time. I'd be also looking at, is there navigation? Is there GPS on the phone? Did the movement of the vehicle correspond with what they're saying to me? And see if there's any deception in what they're saying.
So you have reasonable suspicion.
I think you should. I mean, at any point, I think you should, because again, they're the last persons to see her. They're
not the last persons to see her. The Uber driver is.
I thought Tommaso dropped her off at night.
That's what he said.
Correct.
But the Uber driver is the last person to physically see her alive.
Gotcha.
You would interview that person and you say, to your point, did she get in your car? Yeah. Okay. Can I see your Uber stuff? Okay. And you get hold of Uber with a search warrant, you get all the data back. Okay. But what if Tommaso has an Uber app and he ordered the Uber?
That's true.
Now what?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you have, problems that maybe the story's not lining up.
Right.
So here's another question here. Okay. The next morning, the point of entry into this house. Okay. How did they get into the house?
If I had to take a guess, I'd say the back door.
Okay. Why'd they go around the back?
And this was one of my points too, because I was like, if it was one of the family members, they could have just left the door unlocked and then come back. Could that have been what it was, that they left the door unlocked? Could Nancy have left the door unlocked? Could they have gotten lucky? Could they have been able to have picked the lock? I know that there was theories out there that there was a truck out there that they ran the plates and it was a locksmith or something of that nature. I don't know how accurate that is, that there was a locksmith in the back, but Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. Like, how did they get in the house? I haven't heard of anything as far as sign of forced entry.
I'm not saying that this person here that we're looking at on your screen
Mhm.
is Annie or Tommaso. I'm not saying that.
Right.
For all we know, he's a friend. We don't know that.
True.
So my first thing that I would ever want to do, and which, by the way, I had a 90% solvability rate, and I worked over 300 murders in my career.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so meaning I'm not just saying that to say, hey, look at me. I'm just saying that, is it possible that this guy here on the porch could be within that circle of influence somewhere? And to me, the answer could be yes. I'm not
Right.
saying it is. I'm saying the answer could be yes. Okay. Well, what if you provided all kinds of information to this person?
Right.
Okay. And now all of a sudden the story starts falling apart and you go, you know what? I hate to tell you this. I need to impound your CRV.
Mhm.
Well, why? It's not to show that Mrs. Guthrie came from their house to her house. Okay. They pulled the telematics on that car to verify all kinds of other stuff that we're not aware of yet.
That's true too.
They tore that car apart. They ripped it apart for over 40 days. Okay. You don't go to the victim's family of a missing woman and say, hey, today we need your car. Well, why? Well, we need to search it for evidence.
Mhm.
Okay, well, don't you believe me? No, that's why we're taking your car. Okay, right? That's what police do. That's what investigators do. Okay. And then within a couple of days, you say, oh, and we're searching your house. Well, why? Because we need to search your house. We need to go in your garage. We need to take photographs. We need to run maybe an alternate light source. And we're looking for biological fluid and or forensic evidence in your garage. Well, why would you do that? It's not because you want to eliminate the family. It's because you're trying to find evidence that puts them in a circle somewhere that they think could be problematic. And then you don't go and canvass the neighborhood and ask about your neighbors, specifically the daughter and the son-in-law. You don't go to the neighbor of the son-in-law and the daughter and say, tell me about your neighbor over there. Did you see anything? Did you hear anything? Okay. Remember, the FBI canvassed all those neighborhoods.
Right.
Okay. And then you don't go to a gas station within a couple of miles to a Bitcoin machine and to see if there's been any Bitcoin transaction and ask the clerk for the video of anybody that came in to that Bitcoin machine. You don't do that unless you think something is nearby. Now, could that have been a process to eliminate? Of course, it could always be that. Could it be they don't have enough evidence? Of course, it can always be that. So now you focus on other things, i.e., let's go back a month or two and see what came into this neighborhood. And what if it's their car?
Well, I would expect to see their car coming into the neighborhood to visit her.
That shows a familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
What if they have video of this guy getting out of that car somewhere?
That'd be interesting.
Or somebody driving that car to a gas station to buy a snack or whatever. Yeah, the possibilities are limitless at that point. Okay. So you don't take that kind of stuff off of the table, because the entirety of this narrative, okay, has been, hey, by the way, when the sheriff came out and he said the family's been cleared, you know who hasn't cleared them, i.e. publicly?
Who's that?
The FBI.
Yeah. No, the FBI. I don't think they've come out and said anything publicly. Now, I don't remember. That's all I'm going to ask you.
They haven't. Trust me, it would be news. You
No,
just
no, I know.
Google it.
Did the FBI search Daly and stop him before or after all this had occurred with Nancy's with Tommaso and Annie's car being impounded? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was that was all from a geo search from the CAS team from the FBI. They
Right.
put it, they had a geo fence up, and anybody that came into that arena, multiple pings, from various cell phone towers. Okay, there are some things that you can see pretty rapidly, and it's not rocket science, to try to find them. Okay,
Mhm.
and so yes, they hit his house with a search warrant as well.
Mhm.
Okay? So that means there's probable cause that existed, that they went to a judge and they convinced a judge that, hey, we need that Range Rover, and we need to impound and search that car. Okay. Well, they also hit the the
The
DoorDash guy.
deli-
Yeah,
yeah, the
the
delivery guy.
delivery guy, right? Carlos.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's standard investigative protocol. Okay. But you notice they gave Daly's car back within 4 days. Why did they hold Annie's car for 40 days?
That's a good point. That's a good point. My concern though also with the cars is uh, we haven't heard anything about a vehicle. In the Brian Koberger case, after about 6 weeks, Elantra, they didn't show us the vehicle. A stock photo came out. You have two different vehicles that are searched, or three if you count Annie's. One of them, the delivery driver has a big insignia on the side of the vehicle, and they got a warrant to search that. Um, I kind of have a struggle that a judge, if they have a video of a vehicle on camera, and most of the houses that have security systems, those cameras face the street, and the most common view you're going to get is a profile view of the vehicle. you know do you feel confident that if you had a vehicle, profile vehicle, and it didn't have that big insignia on the side of it, that you could get a warrant to search it?
Well, yeah, because you're going off of the digital evidence. You're not
Okay.
necessarily going off the visual evidence of
Okay.
the vehicle itself. You're able to put the phone. It's more about the phone being in the arena. And once the phone's in the arena and you can match it, yeah, I mean, it would be ideal to match it to a video. But if you
Right.
don't have a video, but you have the phone in the arena, so you make the stop on the car, crossing your fingers. Notice they stopped him not at the house.
Yeah.
They stopped him while moving. Okay, so they probably had the gang task force, the violent crime task force guys, surveilling him up on a surveillance, because they knew they wanted to get his car. And so they waited probably for him to get in the car.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, once you got him in the car, now you can impound that car. Okay. And you can search incident to the arrest. Okay.
Right.
You don't even need a warrant. You just go through the car and do an inventory search.
I
Okay?
agree.
And then all of a sudden you go, holy crap, look, there's blood here. I'll be darned. Let's get a warrant. Okay. Right?
Yeah. Yes,
And,
sir.
and so this whole thing unfolds like that potentially with Carlos. And he's like, man, hey, I'm just delivering packages. You probably saw me there 5 or 6 times. And they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, we did. In fact, we got A, B, C, and D triangulations off of these towers. You've been there on this date, this date, this date, this date, and this date. Okay. And so now if you look at Luke Daly, right, they're going to look for nexus. What are the cross, how does he connect to the property?
Right.
Is he driving through there multiple times? If so, where's he going? Does he go over to visit Annie and Tommaso? I don't know. What if they have that data?
Yeah.
Okay. And they go, yeah, we know him. So what? Right? What does that mean? I didn't, I don't even know. What do you mean he kidnapped my mother-in-law? Okay.
Mhm.
And for all we know, that we don't know if that's the case. Right. But it wouldn't surprise me ultimately in some point where, people just don't tell the truth.
Yeah.
And you just kind of roll with it. I had a case of a mother. Her name was Rebecca Jensen.
Mm-hmm.
She had a pot of potatoes that she left on the stove. And she had 3 kids, her oldest being a 12-year-old, a little girl by the name of Cody. And mom said, hey, Cody, watch your 2 younger brothers. I'm running to the store and I'll be back. I got to go get some more food ingredients. She goes, okay, Mom. Well, 12 hours later, Cody calls 911 and says, hey, my mom has not shown up back home. And so patrol gets the call. They get out there. They see the potatoes are still sitting in the pot on the stove. And the patrol officer was going, he was at a records counter and he was pulling a case number. Well, the guys were still out there. And I just happened to be at the records counter. And he turns to me and he goes, hey, Mac, his name was Doug. And he says, hey, I got this caper where this mom has been missing for like 12 hours. She left 3 kids at home. And it really looks weird because there's, potatoes on the stove. I said, oh, wow, that does sound kind of interesting. Let me get on the phone here and I'll get somebody on it. So I picked up the phone and I called, the office, and the guy, my boss at that time says, well, why don't you run out there and take a look at it and tell me if it looks, too hinky. I said, okay, fine. So I run out there and I start interviewing the 3 kids, and they're like, no, my mom would never have ever left us. She's never done it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, what kind of car did you have? Does she have? And she told us. Okay. So I put a bolo out on the car. I'll be on the lookout, as you know what that is. And I got the family members, other family members, the grandparents, or excuse me, it was grandparents, came and grabbed the 3 kids. And I started looking through the house, nothing off base there, but the car went into, on a BOL. Well, 2 days later, this transient by the name of Dave Mick is driving this car, and patrol stops it, lights it up, gives me a call. I go down there and I said, hey, dude, where'd you get this car? He goes, oh, well, some lady, some crazy lady gave it to me. I said, okay, well, where? He says, oh, it was, way out here in the bush, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, well, fine. You're coming with me and you're going to show me where this crazy lady gave you this car. Okay. I put him back in a cage car, unhandcuffed, by the way. Never handcuff anybody, okay? Because once you handcuff them, they're not detained, they're under arrest. I don't care what people think. That's once you handcuff them, you take away their liberty, and you're going to ask them incriminating questions. You're going to cut them Miranda too. And if people don't know how to do that, then they need to go back to the academy and learn 101. Okay?
I agree.
Long story short, we go back behind this bush area. He gets out of the cop car and he goes, well, hey, I need to tell you something. I said, oh, really? Surprise, right? He goes, well, she didn't actually give it to me. She gave it to these 2 friends of mine. Okay. That's cool. Where are your friends? Oh, they're down there in that tent. So I walk over to the tent and 2 women walk out. Their names were Arlene and Julie. And I'm like, hey, where'd you get this car? Oh, well, some lady gave it to me, and she's told us to watch it. She's coming back. She went down to TJ for a party in Tijuana, and she hasn't come home yet. I said, oh, okay. So that's where you got it? Yeah. Meanwhile, the car's in, impound, because I impounded it, and it's already on its way to the lab. Okay. And I said, no problem. Well, how about we do this? You 3, you get in that car, you get in that car, and you get in that car. we're all going to come down and we're going to talk about this. Are you good with that? Oh yeah, for sure. Okay. I don't want you in trouble or anything. Yeah, no problems, Detective Al. We'll be there. Okay. Get in. I'll meet you at the station. So I put them in separate rooms, right? And I walk them into stories. Okay. Well, in this story, okay, it's like, well, what actually happened, not the first day, by the way, this was like 3 weeks later. I went out to that bush for like 3 weeks, back and forth, talking to these transients living out there. They're all tweakers. And by the way, I could tell you another story connected to this one, but long story short, we take a cadaver dog into the area, and a dog named Scout, and we don't find anything. I'm like, man, I think she's out here somewhere. I don't know why, but I just think she's out here. So I called up the search and rescue gal, and Lynn, if you're watching, great job. Her name is Lynn Diamond. Her dog's name is Scout. And I said, Lynn, I got this gut feeling there's something more out there. I need you to bring Scout again. She goes, Chris, we can't do that. We were just out there the day before. And the day before, by the way, we found another dead body to another homicide that my partner ended up, he took that one. I was still working this one. And I said, okay, I don't know. Would you please meet me out there? She goes, sure. So she shows up. I said, look, yesterday we kind of concentrated over here and the wind was different, all this other stuff. I said, how about if we go over to the left here and send Scout over here, because I think the wind, there's a better wind source coming in. He would be running into the wind. She goes, and she's doing this stuff. And she goes, yeah, I agree with you. So anyway, she sends a dog. Within 15 minutes, that dog hit on her grave.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I'm picking up the phone and I'm calling, my boss, the lieutenant. And I said, hey, I think I got her. She's buried here. And for the public, for you guys to understand, this turns now into an archaeological dig. Okay. I mean, literally, it's like you're digging up, King Tut. Okay. You just don't start, digging through. And then that's why when I saw that picture of the guy with the shovel and the pickaxe in Mexico on Nancy Guthrie, I was like, they don't have her. Okay. No. Nothing to see here. Move along, people. Okay. Because what you do is you stop the bus at the bus stop and say, everybody off the bus, don't touch anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, we sealed it off, and sure enough, it was her through dental records. Okay?
Oh, wow.
So now I've got Julie and Arlene back into the office again because they were down watching us dig.
Yeah.
And they knew that I knew, and they knew that I was going to walk down to them and say, hey, you got a minute? Can we spend some little time here together? Well, the story ended up being that they met her at the grocery store. They were in front of her at the grocery store, and they didn't have enough money to pay for their groceries. So Rebecca paid for their groceries.
Wow.
And they said, hey, they went outside and waited for her to come out and said, hey, thank you for paying for our groceries. Can you give us a ride to where we live? We live in a transient camp behind, at that time, it was a drive-in.
Mm-hmm.
And would you mind giving us a ride? And she goes, oh, no problem. I'll take you home. So they got in the back seat, and as they drove there, Julie pulled a knife and they robbed her, or they tried to rob her. As she stopped, she got out of the car and ran, and they chased her down and they murdered her.
That's sad.
Yeah, it was sad. But the point being, you have to go back over and over and over. Just because somebody tells you something doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth.
Right.
It means you have to verify that truth. So I have been concerned with how they got into the house. I haven't heard anybody talk about how the reporting parties got into the house that morning. Okay. I've heard how they dropped her off and that there's 2 data points in the garage. Okay.
Mhm.
We've all heard that, but we haven't heard, well, how did you get in the house? What did you do?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong there. Like how they get into the house. My assumption is, or one plausible reason the thought is that they got there, walked around, and saw the back doors open. If they weren't involved, right? Because I mean, if they're not involved, let's just say that there is this weird guy who has an infatuation with like Savannah, who, in efforts to get to Savannah, uh, finds an easier, maybe more local person in Nancy, that he could get to Savannah with. Um, I mean, the reporting parties would still be the ones to have seen her, dropped her off, picked her up, reported it, etc. But I get where you're going with it. The one thing that I guess confirms anything would be the digital evidence. Nancy's heart pacemaker connected to her phone. If she had her phone with her that night, is it showing her moving around? Getting to the house, getting into bed, those type of things. I think that's the part that might kind of confirm some of their story, so to speak. If whatever it is that they have, again, I have no idea what they have said. That hasn't become public either. And you're right. How they got into the house is a question mark.
Well, okay. Then let's say you're in patrol and the radio cracks.
Right.
What was a call sign that you used to use?
1603.
Okay, 1603, station whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Hey, blah, 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 respond to this address, stand by. We have our CSI's guys en route.
Right.
Okay. Roger that. You get there, and it's the RP's house. You're like, well, that's weird. Why am I over here?
So they reported it from their home. They didn't report it from Nancy's home.
I don't know.
Okay.
They showed up at 10 o'clock at night, the sheriff's department, their evidence techs walked into the house and came out with bags. They weren't taking trash out, were they?
Probably not. I doubt it.
So see, my brain goes, I wonder what's in that bag that they came out and put into the truck. They also had a table that they brought in, and that's typically to lay, your equipment and or a piece of paper on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you're going to collect something, you're going to put it into that paper and then wrap it up. Okay. And seal it and then put it into another evidence bag. But if you're taking photographs at night, that means you're using an alternate light source of some sort.
Correct.
And for the public, what an ALS is you put these little glasses on, okay, and you can, sometimes you can spray luminol, or they have all kinds of different chemicals, Blue Star. There's all kinds of different chemicals that you can spray, but they leave stains. So typically they won't spray like Blue Star, but they'll use luminol.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And what you're doing is you're looking for any kind of forensic evidence that would glow.
Right.
And once you have that, you can do 2 things. You can swab it and you can photograph it. Okay? You can do both. Okay? So, and then you come out and you stick the swabs into an envelope, and now you have some type of forensics evidence. However, you have to have reasonable suspicion or probable cause to go do that. And you have to present that either in one of 2 ways: to the reporting party that says, you know what, do you mind if we search your garage? Well, why? Why would you want to search our garage? Well, I can't tell you right now, but, we would like your permission to do it. Would you sign a consent form? And if they say, sure, we'll sign a consent form, okay, that's dangerous in of itself, because if this turns out to be a homicide, then you've just opened the door for the defense to say, well, it was coercive in nature, so therefore my client signed that under duress. So it's better to go to a judge and say, Your Honor, we have this bouncing ball, this bouncing ball, this bouncing ball, and this bouncing ball, and this bouncing ball that took us to the garage. Okay. We would like a warrant to go into that garage and search it if possible. No problem. Here you go, detective. And you pick up the phone and you say to the CSI people who are on standby, okay, we've got a warrant, go get it. And I'll be over there in a minute with the receipt, and we'll leave the receipt at the house.
Right.
You notice everything's sealed in this case?
Yeah.
You can't get to it. Okay. There's a reason for that, because not only is it an ongoing investigation, it could be an ongoing death investigation. Okay. And it's moved away from, just a missing person to a criminal investigation. And that's why Nanos keeps saying this is a criminal investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And now you add this dynamic of this team showing up back at the house with the UFED, i.e. the Celebrite box, and you're downloading everybody's phone
right
at the residence. Well, why are you doing that? They're the reporting parties. My mom's missing. Mm-hmm. Okay, give me your phone.
Well, I mean, I would assume that you would have to do that, once this became an investigation into something other than somebody just disappearing by walking off. I would want to cross the T's and dot the I's and look at the family first as well and do those things. I agree with you that there's some bouncing balls that would have gotten them, to get a warrant from a judge. There has to have been some reason, which is kind of like goes back to, Carlos and Daly. I mean, yeah, they were in the area and stuff like that, but if they would have found something, let's just say they would have found something in Carlos's van or Daly's Range Rover. If I was their defense attorney and I said, hey, all you had at the time was their GPS locations. Well, oh boy, worked in the area. That's why he was there. And the other guy lived in the area. That's why his phone showed up. I don't think that's enough that a judge is going to go in there and say, all right, hey, here it is. Go search these people just based on their locations when they had reasons to be there. So I think, you know what I mean? So I just think that, yeah, there's some suspicion there. I would have been suspicious. I'm still like I said, I'm on the fence on everything. I have no opinion one way or another because
I'm just following the bouncing ball. What if there's a phone call from Luke to Tommaso?
Oh yeah, that would be interesting. That would be extremely interesting.
We don't know that.
Right.
Think outside of the box.
Right. Now,
we know there's a text message from this Kaluka guy to Tommaso.
That's true.
So who's to say there's not a phone call or a text message from Luke?
I mean, that would be interesting. And I think that would also give you a reason to go and search that. And then I think you're also, if that's the case, then that means you're also still investigating Tommaso and you're investigating the people that he's text messaged and called.
Right.
During certain times.
Right. And that's where that's when you start looking in the banking system. You start looking into the foundations that people, are involved in. You start looking at the circle of influences around those things. You start looking at the lock mechanisms and you start asking yourself, okay, could a key have ever been used? Is it possible that the suspect in the front porch, for all we know, the camera's gone. We don't even know if he put something in and walked in the house. We don't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what do you think is the point of entry? And if it's not the back door, what be the point of propping it open?
I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know why he would do that. And I'm not saying he did it.
Mhm.
You know, if there's a 56-minute gap, if the family showed up really around 10:45-ish, 11 a.m., which the sheriff said they did, okay, then I'm concerned about that 56 minutes. What did you
There's a
do
lot.
for 56 minutes?
That's if it's 56 minutes. I mean, that's just the time that he disconnected, the camera. He could have been there a lot earlier
No,
for a
no,
lot
I'm
longer.
talking about in the morning.
Oh, okay, okay. I get what you're saying. For the reporting party, what were they doing for 56 minutes?
Right.
Yeah.
If you get a phone call from the girlfriends of the mom, hey, mom didn't show up for church. Okay, we're going to go over and check on her. And they get there, let's say 10:45, hypothetically, between 10:45 and 11 a.m.
Mhm.
The sheriff said 11. So I'm going by what the sheriff said. Okay. He later changed it to 11:56.
Right.
I don't know how you can be off 56 minutes in a high profile like this.
The sheriff's made a lot of mistakes.
Well, hopefully not that big because that's like a canyon.
Yeah.
But Arizona is the Grand Canyon state, so we'll give them that.
There you go.
But that said, okay, if that's 56 minutes that is missing, okay, then what was going on in that 56 minutes? That's a blank spot. Okay. And if you show up and you're looking for your mother-in-law, why didn't you just go through the front door?
Right. Well, I'm assuming they had a key for that. Especially if they helped her out a lot and they were aware of her mobility issues and things of that nature. I wouldn't be surprised if Annie and Tommaso had a key. Now, what could they have been doing during that time? According to Savannah, she said, and I think law enforcement has come out and kind of backed this up as well, is that they initially thought that maybe she had left due to paramedics, et cetera. During that time, maybe they're contacting hospitals and things of that nature. I'm assuming there's a record of that. If that's not happening, then I would be pretty suspicious. If I'm looking at their phones and I'm saying, all right, you get here at 11 o'clock. You claim that your main concern is that she's in the hospital, that maybe she left with paramedics, et cetera. That's what y'all's claim is. All right, let me see your phone. Let me see where that panic is. Let me see where the phone calls to the hospitals are coming through. If that's not on there, then that's suspicious. That's a big red flag.
Yeah, that would be problematic.
That would be. Now,
So
I don't know if it's not on there or not.
no, I concur. I
Mhm.
concur 1,000%. But if you look at the pattern of life here, and that's what's critical.
Yeah.
Okay. Whenever you would drop mom off, or how would you get into the house? Would you go around the back door and come through the back? You know what we've heard, right? What have we heard about the back doors?
That it was just propped open.
Yeah, and mom always leaves her door open.
Mhm.
Remember?
Was the garage door open when the
Great
officers arrived?
No, great question. We
Because if
don't have,
that's how she, if that's
we don't have a data point that morning. We
yeah,
have one for the evening before it.
because like you mentioned, I mean, most people are creatures of habits, right? So if she was dropped off at the garage and that was her, and they helped her in and out of there, I wonder if that's the way they would go in and out of as well, through the garage.
That's a pattern of life.
Mhm.
And you'd have a data point because you have a data point at 9:48 and 9:50 the night before. Why isn't the sheriff telling the public the next morning the family arrived, went through the garage into the house searching for their mother? That's not a holdback information. That's not going to compromise an investigation unless you don't want the public to know. And when the sheriff is asked a dozen times in press conferences, how did the family get in? He goes, we're not going to discuss that. Why not? What did the family not do that you don't want to discuss? Remember, he has not come out and said, okay. What he did come out and say was, okay, at this time, and you look at the timeline, right? The family gets a phone call. The family goes over and looks for the mother. The family doesn't find the mother. I mean, it's almost like this gloss over of, okay, well, did they see the blood? Did they, how long were they in the house? What we hear from Savannah later on is, yeah, my sister called me and said she'd already called the hospitals.
Right.
And Savannah didn't even believe her. Said, well, I'm going to call the hospitals. What, your sister can't do that? Is there a mistrust there? What's going on with that piece of the puzzle?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you last saw mom the night before, and then you call your brother, your older brother, who says, Savannah, I need to tell you, I think you're the cause of this whole thing. It's a kidnap for ransom. Okay. Well, where did he pull that out of the sky? Where'd that come from?
Right.
Did he have a conversation with his younger sister? And she said, yeah, hey, mom's been kidnapped for ransom. And now the other sister, the Savannah, calls the same brother, and he says, hey, I hate to tell you this, but you're the cause of this. Okay. I mean, we don't know what those sequences are yet. But they need, it does cause you to think, holy cow, wait a minute. This bouncing ball is going in different directions here. And it should sequentially just bounce. It should bounce. At 11 a.m., the family got there. They went through the garage, or they went, around the back through the interior of the house. They found the doors propped open. Okay. But the sheriff has said nothing like that. The sheriff has said he has not told the public how the family got in that house.
Well, there was a little hint. When they mentioned the camera that doesn't pick up somebody in the middle of the night, that it picks up motion, which I'm assuming it's an outdoor camera, because he goes on to say that it could have been an animal, but that it does pick up the people showing up in the morning. And if it's the camera in the backyard, then that should tell us that that's the entry, that they walked into the backyard.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I'm assuming that if they walked into the backyard, they would have seen, if what they're saying is true, they would have seen, the back doors propped open, and that could have been their entry point. So, I think that might be it.
What if the camera sees the suspect propping the door open?
That's the one thing that bothers me, is that it, according to Sheriff Nanos, is that it doesn't pick up anything other than motion, and there's no video of it. Now, he could be lying to us. He could be deceiving. He could be keeping that because of whatever reason. But if what he is saying is true, I don't understand how they were able to pull up these images from cameras and not from that one.
Yeah, I think they had to go directly to Google. Remember, a year later in the Murdoch case, remember GMC said, no, we don't have any telemetrics data. And a year later they go, well, yeah, we kind of made a mistake. We do have it.
Yeah.
And they gave it to them. So, it's problematic. It's problematic. I saw one of the pictures you had. What is that door, that slider that was open? Which slider is that? Is that the bathhouse?
This one?
No, where the evidence folks were working.
Let me go through these. I have so many photos.
Yeah,
here.
Not that one. Not that one. There's one more that slider was open.
I'm not sure. I got so many of these photos.
Yeah,
that's the first one. It's probably the other way.
Oh, yeah, keep going. It was an interesting photo. I'd not seen it before. That one. Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that the patio?
I believe so. Yeah, you can see the reflection of the waterfall right there in front of the home, or in front of the in the patio area.
And so that's into her bedroom?
I think this is into the guest. Well, could that be into her bedroom? You know,
I don't know.
'cause let me see where the let me look at an aerial. So
Because
I think that's that right here
oh, okay, so this is into that.
into the back area. Yeah, it's back
It's
here.
not that patio off to the right?
In
Uh,
here,
yeah,
I don't recall ever seeing a fountain in that one.
okay.
I'll go through the images, but I don't recall. But that is interesting. See, look, this is what I was talking about earlier, where he was approaching. You see this step back here, and you see this step back here, and he's stepping right here,
Okay,
and then it's like 3 steps before he's in.
okay.
I strongly suspect he was coming from this direction. Probably looked into the window. Um, Looked into the window, and over here, there's some rocks that would have made it very difficult to, like, especially at night, to walk up. So I strongly suspect he parked in the garage, or like at least right here where this vehicle is, and
Now,
then walked this way around.
when was this vehicle in that position?
Ah, I
Was
don't
this
recall.
later on? Later?
This may have been later on. I don't recall the exact date of when I got this one from.
Okay. These are good pictures, man.
Thank you, thank you. And then like this one here, I know because correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody had sent me something. I hadn't seen it yet, but somebody had told me that maybe there's blood going this way. Is that true? To the
Yeah,
right of
yeah, there's a crack in the concrete right down there.
yeah,
Okay. And then just past that is it looks like transitional turn on the blood.
gotcha.
So it if I was coming out like from this photo here,
Yeah,
it looked like she had gotten at least to that point.
right here,
And
right.
yeah, and then there was a transition to the right.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen the blood up to here. I haven't seen anything. Let me pull up what I have
Mhm.
real quick. Maybe this is the same thing you do, but this is a walked up. Mute it.
Yep.
And is this the video where you got the
Yep. Yep.
yeah, yeah, because this is where I saw the blood at, and it's like way back here. But
Okay.
let me see if there's a transition that you mentioned. Do you think she's based on the separation of the blood drops? Do you think she's walking or being carried?
You know, from I think she as she was coming out, she tripped.
Okay.
Either tripped or pushed or shoved or hit or something, but it was enough impact to when I know there's a lot of opinions on the aspiration up there. I
Right.
I am still convinced that's aspiration up there.
Yeah, my CSI guy thinks that the same thing.
Yeah, because you know there is it just looks classic.
Yeah,
And and it's 90-degree drop with satellite. So meaning she's stationary for a second,
I agree.
maybe two or whatever. Okay. And then it's I think she's being helped up or somebody's positioned her up into a vertical spot again, and she's kind of leaning over, but
Mhm,
she's got slow droplets coming out.
mhm,
Okay? So if it's a nose, if it's a face injury or something like that, you're going to get a lot more blood than
mhm,
what we're seeing right here. Okay. So I think that it could be, a lip. It could, I mean, I'm not even going to speculate. It's a very slow bleed. Okay. But the first one where she falls, it could have been as a direct result of an impact to her chest area.
right.
Okay. And that would cause like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're going to get that aspiration.
Mhm,
Okay. Or if somebody's over her, they can also with the elderly because they bleed so easily.
Yeah.
I've had cases where people have punched elderly victims, and that punch just breaks, what's it called? The little, anyway, where you go like that and you get that aspiration out there. Okay. But that aspiration could be from blood in the mouth. Okay. That she's now spraying out onto the tiles there.
Yeah.
The other little big stain up there. Do you have a picture of that?
I do. Let me pull that up real quick.
Then we can go back to the transition again.
Yeah, let me pull it up. Oops, wrong way.
Whoops.
No, that was the footprint that I think we have. I have an actual better picture of the blood. Pretty close up. It's coming right here.
Okay. Yeah. So that's all 90 degree, and they could have swabbed it. And that's why you have the hollow points in the metal.
Yeah.
Okay. But the only way we're going to know if that came from her lungs or from her mouth is saliva in that blood.
Yeah.
So that was the DNA test that the sheriff came back and he says, we know this is Nancy Guthrie's blood. Okay.
Yeah.
Now that is very difficult if there's saliva in that blood, to replicate in terms of a staging process.
Mm-hmm.
You could do it if you just take a rag, for an example, and put it in blood. Okay. And then you take that rag, and if it's dense enough, you could throw it against a surface like that, and you potentially could end up with that type of pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Improbable in this situation. So at some point she was injured, and that is what appears to be aspiration. The 90-degree drops could be because she's leaning forward, okay, on maybe her front hands, and maybe her knees are obviously behind her at the threshold, or something to that effect. You'd have to diagram that out.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have to get her height and the weight and all this other stuff. And maybe that's what the FBI was doing with the lasers when they had the tent up that day. Okay, they were not only trying to determine the height of the suspect, but they're also trying to determine the positioning of the victim.
Mm-hmm.
So they were probably in there for both of those processes. And so now that she's up and she's moving, she's still somehow leaning over. Okay. I'm not a proponent that the suspect grabbed her and picked her up and carried her out of there. He may have. Okay. But then again, if she has this type of blood, now he has a problem with management.
Mm-hmm.
What a lot of people don't remember or forget is when the heart stops beating, then the blood stops moving in the body, and it immediately starts to settle to its lowest point. And, for the public, it gets to what they call lividity. And in this case, if she's being carried, then that lividity immediately is going to start flowing towards her fingertips, towards her nose, towards her feet, towards her ankles, towards her knees, and it's going to start from the bottom up, top down. Okay, so there's going to be a variety of different places that will start to occur immediately, but you would see immediately a color transition in this blood. This blood is a lot because it has oxygen. Okay.
Oh, okay.
This blood is a lot darker. Okay. You can tell when blood is even coming from the lungs because you can even smell it. Okay. And I know I say the word okay a lot. I apologize.
No, it's quite all right.
I get hammered all the time, but it's just habit. And you'll be surprised how many people, that you're talking to go, yeah, that's what I was thinking. So anyway, if we can move away from that, I wasn't too concerned personally about the weeds on top.
Yeah.
Because we don't know how many cops stepped on that stuff and kicked that stuff around.
That's true.
Okay. Could it have been from the suspect? I didn't see any indication on the video that's clear enough to tell me that blood pattern's already there.
Yeah.
When that individual's trying to pull that camera down.
Right. Right. I don't see any blood on top of it either, on top of any of the shrubs. Wait,
No.
That's interesting. Why wouldn't there be?
Well, the far left one, not so far over, but the one right there at the joint to the right, keep going
That one?
up, right there. That one, that looks like it's got a little, that's blood on blood. So that's satellite. So that means it's a drip within a drip.
Mm.
You see how it spreads out like a spider?
Yeah.
Okay, that's called satellite. Because what's happening is if you take a dropper and you drop one and then you drop two and it hits on top of each other and it spreads out. But you can see a color change there.
Yeah.
It's darker in the middle than it is on the edges.
That's true.
And the same thing on the far right over there. That next one. Oh, yeah, that one. See how dark that is?
That's true.
But look at this one here below it. Now that could be one of two things. Okay, that means it hit something that was there and it's now been moved, the wind, if it was a piece of brush or something, or they took a swab and they cleared out the middle of it as a blood test. Because if you go over to the far right, keep moving over to the right towards that, that big one right there. That one right there. Look at the color look at the color on that.
Mm.
See how dark that is?
Yeah, it's pretty dark.
Okay. And now
these are.
Yeah, and you see how those are satellite. They're kind of splitting out from each other.
Yeah.
Right? And they're going this way. They're moving this way.
Mm-hmm.
So that means they're coming from the house towards the sidewalk.
I agree. So with Steve, my CSI friend, he thought that this for the cluster there of impact, if this was aspirated, that she was fairly close to the ground when she did this, maybe it's 12 to 16 inches off the ground.
Yep, because that's a medium velocity right there.
The interesting thing is we don't see a handprint.
Yeah, well,
do you think she could have been restrained?
Well, it's possible, but her hand could be on that mat.
Okay.
Right. I'm saying just think of her down on her fours.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if she was bleeding, I would assume she would have, if she was free to do so, touch it and then maybe even have to push up to get off, even if somebody's helping her.
Or they just pulling her.
That's true.
Dragging her up because this footprint here, this footprint looking thing. Okay.
Yeah.
There's got to be more blood somewhere.
I agree.
And why is it just in that one spot and it doesn't trail off?
Yeah.
So my question was, is it part of a cane or is it part of an item that they were using for her balance? And it's on the bottom and it's not necessarily a footprint. But I don't know. We don't know what that item is.
No, we don't. We question this a lot about what it could have been. We found something kind of a similar pattern on another piece where you have the three little edges here on the edge of one of the tile pieces, and it's actually not that far from where that one is. It's probably, so this is where the blood is, right? It's probably right here or right here on the edge. I think it's actually right here on the edge of where, and the shoe print is right there. So it's actually not very far away. It's just outside of this image. It's like right here.
Yeah.
But that's the only pattern that we saw that was multiplied.
My problem with this image, meaning that blood,
Yeah.
okay, is zoom in on that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of blood.
That is a lot of blood. He must have stepped in something else.
Where are the other footprints?
My assumption is one came from on the mat, and then you're right, because there's only just that one, and then the one we found here. This is the same one. It's the same image. We only saw this image twice.
Yeah, but you have two of them.
Right.
In that case.
Yeah.
In this one, you have no more. It's gone.
Yeah.
Where did it go?
Not sure.
Yeah. Remember the old paint roller for printers?
Yeah.
Okay. Remember how you used to roll? Okay. And you could roll it out.
Yeah.
And make it look like you're creating a stain.
Uh-huh.
What if you teach a CSI biology class?
Oh, interesting. It's an interesting point. Yeah, no, I know somebody that does that in this case.
Asking for a friend.
Right. Well, so do you think that part could have been maybe put there?
I don't know. I don't see any other evidence of a tennis shoe or a shoe.
Yeah, that spot we were pointing at is right here on this corner.
Okay. Is it as concentrated as the other one?
It is not, but it's also on the edge, so it's kind of hard to tell.
Okay, but you're still going to have transfer with that type of blood concentration. That is a very thick blood concentration.
I agree.
And so you'd have at least going out to those tiles. Okay, so right there, if you look at this one droplet just on the other side of the crack, so stop right there. Whoops. Yep. Okay, now go up with your marker right to the right there. Whoop.
Right here.
No, to the other way. Oh, keep go back. Sorry. Keep going back to your. It would be my left. Go to your left.
That one?
Keep going. Okay, now, whoops. You got that one, and then go up, straight up. Stop. Come back down. You can see it. It looks like an L, the letter L.
Oh, okay.
No, up. Right there. Now go to the right. Go to the right.
Oh, that one?
Right, that letter L. See that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a transition. That blood's moving, and it's turning to the right.
Okay.
And that's why over here now, the far right one, right? Okay, whoop. Okay, now just from that right, keep going up. Right there. That's the second one. That's moving.
Okay.
And now you see these three droplets start following them. One, nope. Go back to that one. You go to the next one. Nope, below it. That one, keep going to the right.
Okay.
No, the other right. Yeah, there you go. Keep going. Right there. Keep going. Whoop. Keep going. You can see one more over here to the far right. Okay. There's no more. It's moving over to the right now. And it's headed towards the path it's headed towards the path alongside the house. Now there's a picture of the DAs or the U.S. attorneys, whoever they are.
Right.
And they're standing there. And one of them takes his camera out, and they probably the evidence tech guy from the FBI is explaining it to him, what's going on. And next thing you know, he takes his camera around and he turns away from the porch and away from the driveway to the right, and he starts taking photographs and videotaping. And now there's pictures on Fox News of them going towards the patio.
Right. Yeah, there's also a broken water sprinkler out there. One of these guys that was stationed out there in front of her house had captured, I think it was like a week or so, maybe 2 weeks after the disappearance, that they had lawn person out there fixing it, and they had reported that it had been leaking for weeks. And so I'm assuming it had been leaking since the time that they had gotten there. It's just had started to really go up, but it
Yeah.
was along that path going towards the side.
Right. But
That's interesting.
yeah, I mean, the U.S. attorney wouldn't have taken pictures of a leaky, sprinkler.
Right, right. No, I'm not saying that he took pictures of that, but that shows that somebody walked that direction, maybe perhaps tripped over it, especially
Yeah,
if you're,
I would agree. Yeah.
especially if you're helping out somebody, or at any case, at some point, somebody went that direction. They may have tripped over the water, and caused it to break.
Yeah, most definitely, it's possible.
Especially if it was like maybe because it did. I'd have to find the tweet, but they were out there fixing it, and it was already kind of popping up. But before then, it hadn't popped up yet. It was just leaking there apparently. And so, yeah, that to me would be evidence that somebody at least went out that direction. Now, if it's with Nancy, why do you think they're going out that direction?
Great question.
I mean, you're getting right towards the driveway and then you turn. It's that's
Which
crazy.
made no sense coming from the right.
Yeah, because I can see this step here.
Now, where did that picture come from?
This one was sent to me from one of my viewers, one of my members. I asked them where they got this picture from, because they told me this was supposedly all the blood that you could see, but it's not accurate because there's blood on this side of the stairway, not on this side. So I wouldn't take too much. I would take this part of it with a grain of salt, knowing what we know with the blood on this side of the sidewalk.
Yeah, and we don't have anything past that crack that I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, because that crack though is like right here. I mean, he must have gone like way down here and then turned off. That's
Well,
because we could see these footsteps, or these footstones in this image here.
right. And to your point, if it's his habit to come in on those footsteps or those stones or just above them.
Yeah. See, that's where it's at, right at that crack.
Yep.
And then
You can see that one pretty clearly, that L shape right there.
yeah.
And then you can see those pretty clearly. Whoops.
That's
modern technology.
Yeah, they canceled it right at the end there. So let's see, when he's walking up, we'll see where that crack is relative to where the step is. See, so it's not okay. It's way back here. All right,
But it's right at those stepping stones.
it is. So do you think that this is possibly done by more than one person? Could there have been somebody, or do you think maybe perhaps he just had a vehicle parked out there to the right?
I'm of the opinion there are at least two.
Okay.
How they got her out of the house, carried her, dragged her, I don't know. We won't know until you sit down with the suspect and say, how'd you get her out of the house?
Right.
I think the floodlight in the back is an anomaly because you have, two lights in the front there. Also, another anomaly, keep going to the porch just for a second.
Yeah.
A lot of people miss this. Stop. Whoop. Go back. Go back. Whoop. Okay. As you go in, look to the left and you'll see a wreath hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've seen that.
Right. So why didn't the suspect just cover the camera?
The flowers thing puzzles me. I wondered if it was some sort of weird message of some sort. because there's a lot of rocks there that he could have easily just pounded, just hit it one time, and it
Yeah.
probably would have fell off, and he could have destroyed it on the side of the house. I mean, he damaged the floodlights in the back, so why wouldn't he be willing to damage the doorbell camera in the front?
It doesn't make sense, does it?
It doesn't.
Put that in the bucket.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense why he would not grab. Why is he grabbing the flowers? And so, I mean, to me, like I said, the one thing that's just been bothering me is if his entry and exit point was the back door, and if that back door was unlocked, why did he even come out to the front to begin with?
Doesn't sound right, does it?
It doesn't. And the one thing that I always thought of was he wanted to be seen. Maybe not everything, but he wanted to be seen. I think he maybe wanted the terror aspect. And then I wondered if something changed. Now he has to go out the front door. Now he doesn't feel comfortable with just that. Maybe the car does have to come out. Maybe it doesn't go directly in the driveway, but maybe it crosses in the street in front of the house, and he's not, he's concerned about it. But, I don't know. I mean, why would he, if his entry and exit point was supposed to be the backyard, why go to the front door and get seen on camera, regardless of anything?
Asking for a friend.
That part bothers me. I always thought that approach seemed staged, seemed weird. Doesn't seem natural.
Well, there's a lot of gaps here. In fact, I did a whole show where we counted 50 holes.
Mm-hmm.
And typically when you get to that number, then you're in the vein.
Yeah.
And, this other noise, just becomes noise, and it becomes problematic. And because then you start chasing, bodies in Mexico. You start chasing just craziness.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, how many times that you got to slow down. I was asked the other day, was it News Nation? They said, what about this gal that was, they got a bolo out on her, and do you think the investigators will talk to her? And I said, yeah, of course they're going to talk to her. They go, well, they've said that, she's been cleared, that she's not related to this at all. I said, well, that's not why they're going to talk to her. And it was Jesse Weber's program.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, why? And I said, because of her background. She's a career criminal, been to prison 4 separate times. She has a history of, abduction, but mind you, it's the kidnapping that she was arrested for was a 15-year-old. Okay. And so, yeah, it's probably not going to be anything. However, okay, she may want a deal. And if they get her and they put her in the box in the interview room, if I was the case agent, I wouldn't talk to her. I'd have one of my guys do it and say, hey, go twist her, see if she wants to make $1 million. There's no loyalty among thieves.
There's not.
And you walk in there and you say, hey, I heard you know something a little bit about kidnapping. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've been charged with it, yada, yada. Okay, well, I know you didn't do this one. However, do you know anybody that may have? Well, I didn't want to say anything, but can I get a deal? Can I talk to my attorney? Okay. And so that's why you can't take this guy off the plate in Los Angeles. This Kaluga guy who just happened to have Tommaso and Annie's phone numbers. He did an open source search and decided, you know what, today I'm going to I'm going to interject myself into the largest publicly, international search for an 84-year-old woman and ask for some Bitcoin. Okay, well, just pick up the phone and call Savannah. You can get her number too, I'm sure of it, or call Cameron. You know, why text message Tommaso? What does he have to do with anything?
Right.
Do you think that's an anomaly?
I think it's interesting. I think it's something that you definitely have to look into. I'm assuming law enforcement have looked into his cell phone data, et cetera. And if what he's saying is true, that he did a search on his phone to get their phone number, then there's going to be that activity on his phone, unless he deleted it and did a factory reset, which is possible. But that's the evidence that I would look for. When does his trial stuff coming up? You said it was coming up pretty soon.
It's in a couple of weeks. They moved it from California to Phoenix.
Interesting.
Why'd they do that?
That's an interesting point. Why would they do that?
Maybe somebody behind the curtain is looking for a deal.
That's true. That's a possibility.
Never say never.
Never. Let's take a couple of these questions real quick. I don't want to take too much more of your time. It's been amazing, but I'm gonna highlight a couple of things. Put a couple of stars, guys. We'll do this probably for about 5 minutes. Answer some questions. Midwest comes in with her membership for 16 months, and then she asks, "Do you think Nana should resign?" I think that's probably an overwhelming yes. I did a poll in my chat, and I was like, "All right, do you guys think that Sheriff Nana should resign?" There was one person who said no, and I was like, "Sheriff, is that you? Are you watching?" And so, do you think he should step down?
Yes.
Yeah, I do too. Cheryl comes in with her membership as well, and so does Stephanie. Real Mikey as well. We have a question. Why did it take? Well, we answered this one. Why did it take Nancy's car? Is that normal? Also, Criminal Network was just arrested again outside of Nancy's easement. I'm not sure who Criminal Network is, but I'm assuming it's one of the guys that are out there streaming in front of her house. How would you feel if you were investigating this case with YouTubers outside of the house? As an investigator, as a person leading an investigation in homicide, you have a homicide investigation, you have YouTubers outside of the victim's house. How do you react to that? How would you handle that situation?
Well, I came out, I've had cases where there were 13 satellite trucks outside.
Mm.
I did a case, a little boy by the name of Matthew Checky, who was slaughtered in a bathroom.
Mm.
He was taking a leak, and a suspect cut his throat and bled him out in the bathroom. When I walked out of that bathroom scene, there were 13 satellite trucks from all over the world. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's true.
It's called the First Amendment. And if, in fact, you set a precedent for 2 months where you let national media, including YouTubers, show up outside of a victim's home and stay there and camp there, put up tents there, and live there, staying in hotels, leaving their stuff and their staff up at night, on site, okay? You can't change your mind just because it's 4 months later.
Right.
That's called precedent. And as long as that individual is on the public highway, i.e. an easement, which there's a 4-foot easement in that area, I think, a civil attorney is going to have a field day. And I think whoever made the command decision to send those guys down there and not go to the citizen and say, look, we're as frustrated as you are. However, it's the First Amendment. I can't kick them out of a public place that they have a right to be. I can't do that. Just because it says neighborhood, Catalina Foothills, it also says the street name. Okay.
That's true.
And that street name belongs to the county. And that property is county property. It's not the neighborhood's property or the neighbor's property. Now, but what's on the other side of that easement and those property lines? Yeah, they bought that. Okay. But if it's maintained by the county and there's clear designation of that, I'm sorry. It's frustrating. You got to drive by and wave at them.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That's I've never been a part of that. I've never had that situation. you know, where I walk out of when I was in law enforcement, I got to the rank of corporal. But I was always just a beat officer, so I never did anything like investigations or things of that nature. And so I've had some scenarios where we had situations where kids went missing and local law enforcement or local media show up and things of that nature, and it ended one way or the other. We found them or alive, or a couple of times we didn't, unfortunately. And so, and in those scenarios, it was, I think, like tour drownings, like near parks and stuff like that. It wasn't anything. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've gone to some pretty crazy stuff. I had one guy that I arrested who did some pretty horrible things to his kids, but there wasn't like news media outside because it hadn't gone anywhere yet. But the missing kids, that one tends to get, traction and stuff. And so that's the closest I've been. So I have no idea what I would do in that scenario, but what can you do? You're absolutely right. You have a First Amendment right to be out there. You're on a public street. You know, it's a tough situation, and you feel for the people that are there because they're the ones that are affected by the traffic and stuff, but there's nothing you can do.
Remember the media? The media has also sometimes the right to go into disaster scenes. Tornadoes, for an example. Okay.
That's true.
You can't kick them out of there because the First Amendment, that's the Constitution. But what you can say is, dude, I would not go in there. It's too dangerous. There's wires down. There's all kinds of stuff down, but I can't prevent you from going in there. If you feel like you want to do that, it's up to you, man. But if you get fried, just remember, I told you not to do it. Okay? Yeah. Now, if it's a homicide or a crime scene and you have tape up, Home Fries isn't passing that tape.
Yeah.
I don't care how many badges you got hanging off your neck. You're not going in there. Okay. But if you allowed ABC, NBC, News Nation, CNN, and every other news nation or every other news local to hang out in front of that house for a couple of months, and now they all went home, but you still have these citizen journalists, which the Supreme Court has said, hey, they still got a journalistic role. Guess what? You're opening yourself up. I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah. Yeah, neither would I. Real Mikey comes in. Chris, do you think staging at Annie's early on was to keep peace without luring up and used as a strategy to play nice?
I don't know. That's a great question. It could have been, but I think it's more problematic. I'm of the opinion that the blood definitely belongs to Nancy because it's been proven that it's DNA, that it's hers. How it got there, I think there's going to be some discussion continuing on that. We'll have to wait to hear what the person said. But I think maybe that 56 minutes is going to play into this somewhere. Now, what that means, I don't know. It's easier to move, pots around than it is to put blood on a porch.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. Rubix comes in saying Chris' voice available as a selection Saturday nav for my car. Loved they want to use your voice for the navigation. That's hilarious. Let's see. I got Sirius coming in saying, thank you so much, DT and Chris. Would love to see you come back and do an Idaho review. Say hi to Karen and Buddy. Great live, DT. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be great. This has been an amazing time. I hope you're enjoying it as much as me.
I am, brother. I mean, it's fun.
Yes, sir. Let's see. I'll pick up maybe two more. Let's see. A couple of stars helps me out that I know you guys are talking to us and not to each other. Well, I'll ask you the last two questions. At what point, I mean, it's already over, 130 days now, going into 131 days. I'm already concerned. I'm sure everybody is that this is going to go cold. But at what point do you think that, all right, this is in danger of not being solved?
first you rip the Band-Aid off when you started. Now you got another loaded question going to the end here. Huh?
Yes, sir.
I think it becomes problematic when you start hearing more from the sheriff.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because right now, remember, he's a boxer.
Yeah.
Right. So as long as he feels like he's getting some type of, point at every round, when he comes out and starts punching, okay, and beating up things, whatever that means, meaning maybe the board of supervisors or stuff like that, then there's no progress being made. But I think digitally that this thing is getting really good traction. I think with the video, it's getting really good traction.
Mm-hmm.
But just the other day, he reminded the world that it's his investigation. And so the more you hear him start saying stuff like that, that means he knows he's winning rounds. Unfortunately, he's swinging at the FBI. He's not swinging at the public.
Mm.
And, that's really where his ego is. And so when he starts getting quiet, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
When he gets loud, I think that could be a red flag.
Good point. Good thing to look out for. And the last question I have for you is, and this is more of a prediction, what do you think is going to break this case? Is it going to be DNA? Is it going to be a tip? Is it going to be a confession? What do you think it'll take to solve it?
It's going to be the first 24 to 48 hours. Within the first 300 pages of an investigation, your suspect's sitting there.
Mm.
Statistically.
Yeah.
And so whatever you said or other people said, witnesses, neighbors, friends, whatever, before you had any of this other stuff. Remember, we solved a lot of homicides without DNA. I started in 1982, okay, and I went into homicide in 1990 for 13 years. And in that 13 years, in 1990, it was like, what? DNA? What is that?
Yeah.
Okay. It was more like, hey, you got ABO, you got B blood type at the crime scene. What? Yes. Now we're cooking. Okay. Get me everybody with, B blood type, whatever. I'm being sarcastic, but that's how it was. So it comes down to this ability to sit down with people and say, so tell me about your life. Give me a little understanding of who you are, what you are. And then from there, we'll work our way out. And at the very end of it, you say, thank you so much. I'll see you later. As you can tell, I got a lot more work to do, but have a good night. Will you be available if I need to talk to you again? Oh, yes, sir, I will. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Have a good one. And you walk them to the door. You say hello. And then, you fly to Hawaii and you pick up Lori Vallow and you hook her up.
There you go.
Hook 'em and book 'em.
Well, I hope this case gets solved soon. I hope there's resolution very soon. And there can be peace to Nancy Guthrie. And we'll stay tuned. What do you have coming up next that you would like to plug for everybody?
You know what? I just have this weekend, I'm going to talk about Summer Wells again. Okay. And my wife is doing a whole bunch of stuff. I married an investigative journalist. So I told her I brought her over from the dark side because, back in the day, she was really dangerous. Our story is pretty unique, but you never wanted to see your cases above the fold in the newspapers. And she had so many sources. It was like, man, so anyway, that said, we're going to do Summer Wells this weekend and hopefully be great. And I see some of our mods here. I see Holly's in here. It's great to see our people here supporting the channel. So it's
that is awesome. Yes. I'll be there to check it out. I know a little bit about the Summer Wells case. It's not something that I've investigated too heavily. or looked into too much. But I've spoke with a guy, Ryan Finds Truth. He actually does searches and stuff in that area, and I've had him on the channel a couple of times referencing the case. That one's interesting. That one, uh, I've seen a lot of your coverage on it with the Summer Wells case, and um, your interviews are amazing. It's top notch. Great stuff, great information. That's
Still,
probably, huh?
still learning.
Still learning. There you go. Well, guys, for me, I'll probably be on tomorrow night. On this channel, I have another channel called Married to the Hobby that I do with my wife. Little shameless plug. If you're into like little minis or into Pokemon cards, we rip stuff like that on that. So go check it out.
Okay.
Also, if you ever have any time, you should look into the Timothy D's case. I work with his mom. He passed away a few years ago, and she's not getting anywhere. Steve from True Crime Web, who has the CSI guy who has the Cold Case Foundation, he's been trying to help her out as well. And they just keep getting stonewalled from law enforcement. And it's a strange case. This guy goes missing. Right before he goes missing, he calls 911, says his friend was chasing him or was about to hurt him. Hangs up the phone, never seen again alive. His friend has multiple different stories about that night. And the weird thing about it is, like, Timothy D's, he goes missing that morning, probably about 3 or 4 in the mornings when 911 called happened. His debit card gets used at like 9, 10 in the morning. And the guy that we suspect may have committed this crime, his alibi is that he was arrested at 9 a.m., because of a gas drive off. And the sheriff's like, no, he's arrested. He's arrested. I have a picture of it. And sure enough, that picture's at 10:02. And so it's pretty weird. But Cold Case Foundation finally got that Steve runs got an invitation, and they got stonewalled, said there's nothing there. Everything's been hit by lightning, apparently. It is a weirdest case. I'll send you some information if you're ever interested in it.
Yeah.
I think your knowledge could really help out Barbara in that case. But
Where's it at? Out of Texas?
out of Fredericktown, Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you some information. I think I still have a video on it. I have, and the weirdest thing is, so this one guy who he ends up taking a lie detector test and fails it, and he tells the investigators that when you find him, he's going to be disrobed. And when they finally find him, he is disrobed. Now, the police there are saying that because they found him kind of near a little bit of like a creek, but it was really shallow, like 3 or 4 inches. And they were saying, well, it could have rained, and that rain could have caused his pants to come down. The problem is that would have gone against the flow of the water. And then the weirdest thing about it is when they found him, there's pictures, and Barbara has him. His tooth is missing. But when it gets back to the coroner, his tooth is back in there.
She has all the police reports?
She has as much as she can. We have surveillance. I mean, we have audio. This guy makes a mistake. He tells law enforcement in 3 different interviews that, well, one, he tries to say that the guy found a box full of with a social security card, with an ID and some other stuff, and he was going to run away and change his identity. That's what his story was. He tells the cops he has no idea how much money he had on him. However, in a phone conversation that he has in prison, he's in jail for the first like 40 days for an unrelated warrant. While he's in there, he's talking to his sister, and he tells his sister the exact amount of money that Timothy D's had on him. But yet he tells law enforcement twice before then and once after that he had no idea how much money he had, but he tells his sister, yeah, he had $180 on him. And then his last message to Timothy D's was about 7 that morning, saying, when I find you, I'm going to beat your ass. And then even after he's confronted, and even after he's being accused of being the guy that may have something to do with him, he never reaches out to say, where are you, bro? What are you doing? They're accusing me of this. Nothing. And it's just weird.
Did he owe money?
These guys were into drugs.
Yeah, sounds like a drug problem.
Yeah, even Timothy, he was into drugs and stuff too. He had some drugs on him, and it just kind of, and they were gone.
Meth?
So, he described, I think he said it was more so like Prozacs and stuff like that.
Okay, pills.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you know, Timothy, yeah, he had a problem. His brother had just passed away, and so he was kind of going through that motion. And so, but you just have some statements from some guys in that case that just don't seem right. Don't seem right. I'll send you some information.
Yeah.
I did a whole video on it, and then it got taken down like crazy.
Who took it down? YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube took it down, but the thing is, it took me down, and it took anybody that covered that case down.
Really?
Yeah, I know 3 other people who were covering that specific case, and everything got taken down. And the only thing I was doing was pointing out that because so Timothy's body was found on a sitting judge's property, and that judge's wife had told Timothy Dees' mom, Barbara, you ain't ever gonna effing find out what happened to your son. So quit it already, quit searching and quit doing this. And that apparently was captured on body camera. That body camera was struck by lightning. The footage of the ATM machine where somebody goes and uses his debit card at 9 a.m., that was struck by lightning. And then supposedly the 911 call where he said that my friend is trying to, hurt me. Law enforcement initially said, no, that didn't happen and that they don't have it. And then she made contact with the officer that responded, and she has this recorded from him saying, no, I did respond to that call. And that call was this, that he was running away from a friend of his. We couldn't find him, but that's what the call came in as. And so there's just some weird stuff. There was a cadaver dog that went out there and hit on a storage unit about 200 yards away from where Timothy D's body would end up being found. And police refused to search it because it belonged to a police officer. So it's a crazy scenario, man. It's some crazy stuff. I'm not one to believe that law enforcement, I don't think law enforcement had anything to do with his death. But one thing I've told Barbara and I've told Steve is like, man, it sure does sound like somebody just doesn't want this investigated. Maybe they had their hands in the cookie jar of some sort of drug thing that they don't want coming out. But that's kind of how I feel about it. It's a weird scenario.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll send you some information and see what you think. But I want to thank you again for joining me.
For Daniel, I appreciate it. And all you, what do you call your chat here or your family?
We're the turkey family. This is my
family's all right. I love it. Well, thank you so much for the invite, and really appreciate having the time to spend with you. So again,
yes, sir.
As they say in Hawaii, aloha. I'll see you on the next one.
See you on the next one, man.
And
hopefully we'll be soon.
All right, buddy.
Take it easy, buddy. Bye.